Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to welcome you at this session of the Just Transition Platform meeting, focusing on REPowerEU and implication and opportunities for coal and carbon-intensive regions in transition. My name is Carlo Della Libera. I'm a member of the Secretariat of the Initiative for Coal Regions in Transition, and I will have the pleasure to moderate this session. And I do count on your contribution, on the audience contribution, for an active discussion by submitting questions at any time throughout the session through the questions and chat tool in Swapcard in order to fuel the discussion with our speakers and panelists. The REPowerEU plan proposed in early March by the European Commission in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine outlines the will to make Europe independent from Russian fossil fuels well before 2030. It also includes measures to respond to rising energy prices, boosting energy efficiency, and increasing renewables and electrification, among other measures. While the REPowerEU plan is expected to be actually unveiled next week, this session aims to discuss some of the key elements, key aspects of the plan. To also address the challenges, but also opportunities that there could be for regions in transition. And we will therefore discuss, thanks to a very interesting panel, how the REPowerEU proposal can help regions in their path towards a just transition. Despite these times of crisis, the path to climate neutrality and to a just transition remains at the core of the EU policies. We heard it several times during these days as part of the Just Transition Platform event, and it has been outlined right from the beginning from Commissioner Simpson that said that during the opening session of the JTP meeting that coal has no long-term future in the EU, and the EU will not deviate of its 2030 and 2050 targets for emission reduction and carbon neutrality. During the session, we will have the opportunity to discuss with four panelists that will come with their own angle from their experience on how the REPowerEU plan could support the transition, and how opportunities can be seized that can be derived from the implementation of the plan. Before I invite our first speaker to take the floor, let me just give you a few words about how this session will unfold. We will first have a presentation by Veronica Zacco from the Joint Research Center, the European Commission, that will kind of set the scene and provide us a background on the REPowerEU and the implication for skills for just transition. We will then proceed to our panel discussion with three other panelists that will join. I will have the pleasure to introduce them after Veronica's presentation. We have little less than an hour ahead of us. Again, please feel free to pose a question at any time. We will try to respond to all of them, despite the limited time. But if not possible, we will try to follow up individually in order to provide you with an answer to your questions. You should be able to use, I'm sure you can use the Swapcard application with the chat and questions from your browser. So please feel free to do it at any time. Let me now introduce our first speaker that will set the scene also for the discussion, Veronica Xaco, and she has been working on clean energy transition related topics since 2011 and completed a PhD in environmental sciences and policy at the Central European University. Her research at the JRC focuses on employment, education, and skills related to the clean energy transition. Therefore, I will not waste any more time, and Veronica, the floor or the streaming in this case is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Carlo, and for the invitation to do this scene setter presentation. So, as you said, I'm going to approach the topic from the skills aspects of the skill preconditions to read the opportunities for the regions in transition in the context of REPowerEU. Next slide, please. So just to give an overview of the presentation, first of all, I'm going to talk about the citizen roles in the context of REPowerEU, followed by the human resource challenges of the green transition, the critical professions, fit for future skill sets that are needed across the economy, participation in adult learning, the main EU skill response avenues, and at the end of the presentation, I'm going to outline the challenges, trends, and responses in terms of skills in the building sector. Next slide, please. So REPowerEU is a joint European action for more affordable, secure, and sustainable energy, and citizens within this context are impacted as consumers as well as labor market actors. As consumers, they experience the increasing energy prices. At the same time, they can also benefit from increased energy efficiency of their dwellings if they are benefiting from the energy efficiency support programs and actions. As labor market actors, they can participate in clean energy technologies, renewable energy industries, or the energy efficiency related construction initiatives. Next slide, please. The main human resource challenges of the green transition focus around to have enough people with the right skill sets at the right places. So we are facing potential labor supply from declining sectors in core regions. At the same time, clean energy sectors and the energy sector in general is looking at labor shortages, especially in key professions like middle educated roles of technicians and electricians, as well as high education roles or high level education of engineering. Parallel to this, the green transition, we are in the context of the digital transition, which brings in requirements for digital skills. At the same time, in the regions in transition, we have transferable skills that can be used. At the same time, upskilling and reskilling needs on the way to the new industries. There's also the issue of labor mobility, so the jobs may be in a different place than they used to be before. So as I said, the critical professions, the skills bottlenecks arise most significantly in technical roles, so for electricians as well as for engineers of different types. But software developers and surveyors, machinery operators are all in need. For example, surveyors in the context of project development phase of renewable energy investments. So we need fit for future skill sets in the digital green twin transitions. First of all, the foundation future-oriented skills are cognitive skills, digital skills, interpersonal skills, and self-leadership. Here we have to think about complex projects that are implemented by teams and frequent interaction. The literature, as I said already, identifies green economy skills that are around technical, engineering, and scientific skills, but managerial skills are also of key importance when we look at the big projects and that need to be managed and complexly implemented. In the electricity sector, we can look at an example. What are the new skills needs that have been identified? So Internet of Things, automation, artificial intelligence, smart grid knowledge, at the same time to have some skill in customer journey and automation and controlling. And as a foundation of everything, the sustainability competencies. These competencies focus on having an understanding of sustainability and an approach to sustainability both in our everyday life as well as in our work. And the European Commission issued a proposal for Council recommendation on learning for environmental sustainability in the beginning of this year, which looks into how to increase sustainability education across all education levels. On this slide, it's demonstrated, it this slide focuses on participation and adult learning, because in the regions in transition, as I said, we look into different skills that may be needed for the workforce that moves from one type of job to the other. So across the EU, according to the Adult Education Survey of 2016, 30% of people, of the participants, participated in adult training, but only 18% of low qualified adults participated in adult training. So basically, the EU aims that by 2030, this value in general, this ratio reaches 60%. But it's important to note that different regions in transition may have different starting points in this participation. This depends on the country's culture in adult learning, if it's widespread or not, as well as digital access and digital literacy at the outset. So basically, regions who already have a good starting point or tradition in this would have a head start in the future as well. Also, according to the survey, the respondents answered about the main barriers to why they don't want to or don't participate in adult learning. So the cost of the courses, the low income due to loss of income due to taking part or taking time off work, lack of awareness of training opportunities, uncertainty over whether employers would recognize training achievements, and time constraints as well. So basically, there are a number of things that hold people back from participating in adult learning, which is key for upskilling and reskilling. At the EU level, skills response is already ongoing. The European Skills Agenda was announced in 2020 with 12 key actions. Action 1 is the Pact for Skills, which is a shared engagement model setting in industrial ecosystems. So in these pacts, in different industrial ecosystems, the different stakeholders come together to develop a skill strategy and to implement it. So industry stakeholders, education, local authorities, regional development agencies, so different kind of actors come together to help the region in terms of skills, providing the skills at the right place at the right time. The Digital Education Action Plan is also supporting this process by providing high-performing digital education system, or aiming to set this up, as well as enhancing digital skills and competencies for the digital transformation among the population. So sectoral cooperations have been set up in different industries already, in construction, automotive, batteries, energy value chain digitalization, and energy-intensive industries. Skills intelligence is also highlighted in the European Skills Agenda as an action area. The European Centre for Development of Vocational Training is engaging in skills intelligence monitoring, and the European Classification of Occupation Skills and Competencies, or the ESCO classification, has been set up and is continuously developed. In this, there are 3,000 occupations currently involved, and it establishes and systematically shows the connections between the occupation, the skills, and the qualifications, education required. And this is a tool that is available for the job seekers as well as the employers and education institutions. The building sector, now moving on to this sector specifically, faces specific labor market challenges. According to the European Construction Sector Observatory, the sector is faced by structural fragmentation and the domination of small and medium-sized enterprises, which poses a certain set of challenges in terms of skill development. These companies lack the financial and human capacity to train employees in a lot of the cases, and they use temporary employment models, and they have limited incentives for long-term workforce investment in this context. The sector in many countries has negative image in terms of non-payments, and it's also affected by suboptimal vocational education and training quality. There is also a challenge in official recognition of skills between EU member states. So if somebody goes to another country, the knowledge that they have may not be possible to demonstrate. So basically, next slide, please. Action is taken to overcome these challenges. At the same time, while the building sector has these challenges, it's also in the context of modernization. So the life cycle approach, digital construction is already taking place, so building information modeling, artificial reality, 3D laser scanning. By using these new technologies, the people designing the buildings, the experts, the professionals have a better way of collaborating and supporting each other's actions. Smart buildings and focus on the occupant. So these are the new trends that in the building sector, the skills have to be made or be available to make a green transition. A skills blueprint has already been launched for the construction industry to create a new generation of digitally aware, multi-skilled workers. New training curricula and online courses are being developed. Again, the digital literacy and access here is of significance. And a report is developed on the professions and qualifications in need of modernization within the building sector. So it's an organized way of looking at what has to be done in the sector. Here I would like to say a few things about the projects of the Buildup Skills Initiative, which has been running for over 10 years with EU support, building skills for the modernizing construction sector. Target areas and actions are for the target areas specific tools like building information modeling, building types such as heritage buildings, and professions like heating, ventilation, and cooling professionals, especially in the context of the increased importance of implementing heat pumps and professional groups across the entire value chain. And on the right side, we see the specific actions that the projects are working on that make the training possible and accessible to the people who need it. So on-site training where they are working, training and certification programs, e-learning platforms, competence databases, skills registers, and advisor apps, freely accessible training materials, as well as train the trainer schemes. So basically, I would like to say here that there's a lot of action already happening, and then there is a little ray of hope of where to go and what to do in the sector, which is experiencing challenges. And also the building sector is especially important because buildings-related jobs are everywhere. They are not geographically located. So it's a sector that is a key challenge, a key player in achieving REPowerEU as well as climate targets in the EU and elsewhere. So next slide, please. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Veronica, and for mentioning a ray of hope. I think you mentioned, right? So I think that's very welcomed. We're now moving to. Thank you very much for your presentation, but we will come back to that also during the panel discussion. We will now move to the panel discussion with bringing together four panelists. I'd like to first introduce Gaspard de Moor. He's a team leader for National Renovation Strategies and Recovery at the European Commission Directorate General for Energy. Welcome, Gaspard. We will also have Jeppe Jensen from the European Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. And the hub aims to foster knowledge about energy poverty in Europe and develop innovative policies and practices to face it. Jeppe's work has focused on strengthening local climate action in EU and beyond, which I think is where actually is calling from, is beyond the EU. Then we have Louise Sunderland. Our third panelist. Louise is a senior advisor for the Regulatory Assistance Project, working on demand-side energy policies and energy justice. And she has worked on energy efficiency and related aspects for, I think, more than 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. And then you already met her, so I will not spend time on this. And Veronica from the JRC. So I'm very glad to have you all here in the panel. Let me also remind the audience, the one following virtually, sadly, that you're more than welcome to, and you're cordially invited to pose questions in the Swapcard application, so that we will be able to share them with the speakers. I would like first to ask a few questions that are perhaps could require quite a long answer, but I will ask you to be a bit brief in order to allow a more intense discussion later on. I would like to start with Jeppe, and thanks also to your experience. We know that regions in transition and citizen have been hit very hard, first by a pandemic outbreak, then energy prices rise, and now the consequence of a terrible war. What are the key impacts on energy poverty from the advisory hub point of view, and also to your from your experience? And how do you think REPowerEU can respond to those challenges?
It's a big question, obviously, but I think if you look at it, REPowerEU is our latest effort to accelerate our energy transition. This time, the reason for this additional acceleration is unfortunately about the war in Ukraine. But we have gradually seen that the whole European Union is stepping up the ambitions. What we need to remember is that when we do accelerate, we are more likely to lose people in this race. And that's why we increasingly need to focus. The faster we go, the more ambitious we are, the more we need to focus on those that we may lose in this, and ensure that we are protecting them. And from REPower's, obviously, REPowerEU has a specific focus on the supply due to its reasons. But on the other hand, it's positive to see that there are also considered immediate actions in order to ensure in order to ensure the consumers, such as looking at sort of stop for thresholds for how much our energy prices can raise, etc. And at the same time, I would also like to emphasize the fact that we should not only look at the supply side, but it's really when it comes to the vulnerable consumer, the most immediate actions we can deal with is the demand side, and that's where, in particular, local and regional authorities come in, because the local and regional authorities are the closest to the households that are either in energy poverty or at risk of being in energy poverty. So the importance, I would like to stress, now that we don't see the full spectrum yet of REPowerEU, is the importance of looking at all levels of governance. All levels have different strengths. I would say I'm biased, obviously, with my background in local energy planning, but cities, municipalities, and down to community level can deploy immediate actions that will have an impact on vulnerable consumers. So that is the strength here. But if we want to have the scale and the volume, that means that we also need to obviously have national and European level on board, and that's why it's crucial that all levels are taking actions at the same time and have an understanding of what the different levels are doing. And my hope is that we will ensure this also becomes part of the acceleration that REPowerEU calls for. I hope that sort of was just a brief part of a very large question here.
Thank you, Jeppe. But we will come back. We will come back to this. I think that acceleration has been one of the key words of these 3 days of event, and we will not forget about it. We will come back. We will come back later on this. You mentioned a different level of engagement, local at the EU and the national level, and also to the focus on the demand side. And on this regard, I would like to go to Gaspar and have a question for you. And as REPowerEU, as Jeppe mentioned, also as this attention towards the more vulnerable in a way, but outlines also this need to accelerate and that to uptake energy efficiency measures in all forms, but especially at the level of homes and buildings, which I think is a topic that is very close to you. What do you think are the opportunities that REPowerEU is outlining for regions in transition in that regard, and what could be the policy tools that are out there to support regions in their transition?
Thanks a lot. And indeed, I mean, the repower dimension of the recovery plans is adding a lot of opportunities, and we see already that many member states are focusing on energy efficiency as a way to deal with the energy security situation in the difficult geopolitical context. So this is really good news. This will, of course, entail a number of challenges. The first challenge is to differentiate the project that have been already selected in the first round of recovery plans and this new repower dimension. I think there we see that many projects are going really to focus on energy savings and short-term measures to reduce energy consumption, and this is extremely useful, notably when focusing on decarbonization of heating and cooling, a big focus on heat pumps and decarbonization of heating and cooling. So this is really good. It goes in the right direction. The challenge there is to make sure that we combine short-term measures, immediate action, and the long-term in-depth renovation perspective, that we don't lose the focus of this long-term perspective where we have structural measures that are put in place, and we work with member states very much in that direction. I would say the second opportunity and challenge in a way is that we will have a lot of funding put on the table, and there will be absorption challenges, the capacity to use that money efficiently on the ground, and there I think one-stop shops will be absolutely essential, even more today than ever, to guide citizens towards what is available. Many of them will not know that this additional leg of the recovery plan is available. So we really work to work on structural reforms with member states on the way to inform consumers, especially low-income consumers or households. So one-stop shop is absolutely essential there. I would add a third challenge slash opportunity, which is the involvement of the private sector. We've been discussing just before with Veronica on skills. It's clear that SMEs are at the core of the construction sector. We will need to engage the SME sector to help them increase, upskill their workforce. But more generally, with all the money that will come from the regional funds and from the recovery plans, including the repower dimension, we know that this will not be sufficient for transforming the buildings that we have in Europe. So we will need to have also the banking sector, ESCO's company, really jumping into that adventure. And for that, we also need skills in that specific sector, to have technicians that help people when they're going for a loan, to really understand how to build a project. And so we are also working very closely with the banking sector to add to the public money that will be put on the table to really have a strong levy effect. So in a nutshell, that is a bit what I could say at this stage, and staying at your disposal to answer your question afterwards.
Thank you very much, Gaspar. I saw quite a few nodding when you outlined your three main points, and I would like to go now to Louise to kind of bridge these two questions together in a way. And Gaspar, you mentioned about this need to not lose the focus, to keep on in the path toward renovation, energy efficiency, also in the long term. It's not a short run, but it should be a constant focus. And Louise, to you, a question that I have is somehow based on this. So on the what do we do with energy efficiency? How does the REPowerEU support this kind of long-term perspective, and how this can actually alleviate also the burden to the most vulnerable, and alleviating the energy poverty aspects? that Jeppe outlined to us before.
Yes, thank you, and really welcome, obviously, to hear that. Although what we are addressing with REPowerEU is very much a supply and a price problem. Actually, the demand side policies are a huge part of the solution, and certainly looking at alleviating energy poverty. We know from long experience now that energy efficiency is the most cost-effective long-term solution to alleviating energy poverty in households. And I say that in comparison to the other measures that are quite often prioritised, which are important, which are price support and income support. But obviously price support and income support, you need to keep providing those every year to keep the same level of benefit at the household level. And so I quite often refer to those policies as a little bit like filling the bathtub without the plug-in. Whereas what energy efficiency can do, renovations of homes can do, is obviously protect, a year one investment creates benefits for all of the following years, and it protects that household who's benefited from that renovation from future price volatility. It also helps them in the long term to move away from fossil fuels from their heating. So really can't put enough emphasis on energy efficiency, and I think the energy efficiency principle, when applied across all of the EU policies, is incredibly important to make sure that we're looking at demand side policies when they are more cost effective than the centralised supply side policies. The other really important thing to say as well about the energy efficiency policies is that not only do they provide energy benefits, I think we're all quite familiar with this now, but they provide really essential non-energy benefits along the lines of massive health improvements, social benefits, educational benefits to households who were previously living in cold and damp homes. They also bring huge jobs benefits, as Veronica has talked about, and jobs that are spread across all communities. Renovation needs to happen, unfortunately, it needs to happen in all areas of Europe, but that does bring then the renovation jobs across all areas of Europe, which centralised supply investment actually doesn't. So I think I can't say enough about how important energy efficiency is from the point of view of alleviating energy poverty. It isn't always prioritised actually in long-term member state strategies or actually in the short-term strategies. So I think we need to do more to prioritise it. The other thing, just to say in the context of REPowerEU, is that focusing more on the energy efficiency side can avoid, in this time of crisis, our investment in solutions that actually aren't the best long-term decisions. So investing in energy efficiency is a massive no regret. It keeps us on the right pathway to the most efficient solution to pathway to 2050. It can avoid investments in fossil fuel infrastructure that actually in the long term is not needed. And from the energy poverty point of view, that's really, really important, because there is a huge risk that as better off households can be incentivized to take on a heat pump or decarbonize and put solar PV on the roofs, low-income households really risk being left reliant on fossil fuels, which, as is so evident right now, are volatile and not the future. So I can't say enough about energy efficiency and the demand side. There are huge challenges, and I think the two things that I always mention, I think, have already been kind of commented on to some extent. So how to mobilise fast enough. How do we get energy efficiency out there at scale and quickly enough? And I think what Jeppe was saying about more local level governance being actively involved, and the points around one-stop shops, absolutely super important. But I'd add to that then how do we target as well? How do we make sure that the energy efficiency measures are targeted on those households that really, really need them most, and they need them first? I think that's the other huge challenge in making all of this come together.
Thank you very much, Louise. And I think that your answer, in a way, also replied to a question that we see was posed by a participant on somehow the need to provide stronger support to those that are more in need, as energy efficiency measures should go also to and especially for poor households and those that are most in need. think you also mentioned about community, about the local dimension in your answer, and I wanted to get back just for a short question to Veronica, and based also on her presentation. We see now, and you outlined in your presentation the challenges, but the linked to the somehow to the human dimension, to the job opportunities of communities in areas that are affected strongly by transition. How do we make sure that in a nutshell, of course, that communities are engaged in this in all this process, and that future-proof jobs are maintained in those regions?
I think it's a really good question, and it also makes me think about how communities themselves are quite diverse. So basically, or if you look at a region as a community or an industrial culture, some people will be able to find jobs and they will have easier time, but there will be population groups that will have a more difficult time or age, because of their age or because of their expertise or because of the industries coming in. And those groups that are at risk need specific attention. I would also like to mention, because I heard so many times acceleration and speed and immediate action, also in the sense of the training provision. Traditional ways of education may not be the best way of responding to the skills challenges. So basically, higher education institutions have started to launch postgraduate programs, which are not necessarily the accredited master's programs, but something that can be implemented faster. Or actually, the industry is providing the training that are needed. The industry goes to the community or to the people who are losing their jobs and offers the new type of job or the training that is required. So basically, it may be happening organically from the private industry side, but I think collaboration with the government and regional authorities is also needed. So basically, there is a strong element of collaboration at the territorial level, which is needed and solidarity as well, because there will be people who may be remaining at disadvantage. Also in terms of the training, because there may be groups that cannot access the trainings because they traditionally are not interested in that industry. So basically, I think these disadvantages can layer up upon each other, and it's interesting, coming back to what Louis said, to target the support and the attention and potentially help the organization like NGOs who are in contact with these groups and to provide support for them.
Thank you very much, Veronica. I don't know if any of the other panelists wants to intervene at any time. You just, you wave, and I will know that you will be involved. I would like to read a question that we received in the chat. Renovation and energy efficiency for poor households is not a question of access to information, but lack of resources. In other words, those who need it the most are also the ones who can afford it at the least. Are there support measures for these households from the EU? Maybe we can expand it also, not only the EU, but also that if you're aware of other measure, national or regional examples that can be shared. Gaspar, I think this is for you.
Yeah, no, it's a fair statement. I wouldn't say that information though is not an issue. I think from time to time, I mean, you do have support programs that are not used to their full extent, but it's true that the question of access to finance and resources is essential. What we have seen in the first round of recovery plans is that many member states have actually used the money available for the recovery to top up or develop further programs geared towards households with low income. And this was very useful to increase the depth of potential renovation, to enlarge the scope of the program, so really to cover a large section of the population that was in need for support. So we have seen that the recovery plans have been used for reaching out to vulnerable households. We also have dedicated funds at EU level for this. You know that we are discussing this climate and social fund that will be dedicated specifically to energy poverty and to vulnerable households. We are also discussing at the moment the operational programs, so the implementing programs for the regional funds, and a large component of these regional funds is specifically dedicated to help citizens that want to renovate their home and do not have the resources for that. And the work that we are doing for the moment is to align, if you want, the objectives that are in the long-term renovation strategies of the member states, in the recovery plans, in the repower dimension, and in the regional and research funds, to make sure that we have one narrative, one approach to energy efficiency in buildings. And we are very pleased to see that member states and regions are really helping us, having this common narrative and approach. So focusing very much on, energy poverty, households that need access to finance, but also access to information, one-stop shops, and also help for the banking sector to develop specific products also in the commercial field for people that are in need of resources. So really fully agree with the approach. We need to increase access to resources and at the same time increase access to information so that people can use the funds that are actually made available.
Thank you, Gaspar. Thank you very much. I think that it's Jeppe. I was actually pointing at you because I would like to ask you also to complement this. I think that one of the elements also that emerged from Gaspar is that yes, there are opportunities that requires also quite a strong coordination at a different level in order to make sure that the right tool is used at the right moment. Jeppe, please, would you like to elaborate a bit on Gaspar comment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously because the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub is somehow, let's say, Gaspar's extended arm to the local level. Basically, we are providing all sorts of support, capacity building, e-learning. We are also developing sort of a very practical step-by-step handbook series on that is there to empower local authorities to take actions. And the combination of sort of the, let's say, the more structural changes and in particular now we see sort of the recovery funds, we see the social climate funds, the combination of the skills that hopefully we will hopefully provide to the local level, combined with the EU level funding mechanisms, is hopefully sort of providing a very sort of enabling environment to take actions. And from our side, we are, I would also like to highlight the fact that we are making a lot of effort in empowering local authorities in the sense that they are the experts in their context, because there are not two municipalities that are the same. So when we will never say that here is a best practice example. It's inspiration, because obviously it's the municipal officers in their municipalities. They might know the local social civil society organization that's been working on, let's say, with low-income households for ages. So it's this framework that we are establishing, and hopefully the municipalities will embrace this across the European Union, and then this is done under the umbrella that Gaspar somehow spelled out here for us.
Thank you very much, Jeppe. So I think that's very useful information, and I think that perhaps you can also share later on some links to the initiative so that people can access this information. Louise, I would like to ask you if you have any comments on this regard.
Yes, I mean the original question is a really good one, and I think it does go right to the heart of the challenge we have, is that do we have enough resource mobilized, but also are we targeting it in the right way? And I think, it's absolutely right to say that there are lots of funds that could be used for renovation. Are they, within those funds, actually, there's often quite a competition for how member states decide to use them. And renovation, as we know, I've been working in renovation for 15 years, and I feel like we haven't made a lot of progress in that time. We haven't cracked the nut yet. And I think that does tell us that when funds have competition, renovation often isn't the primary destination for those funds, because there are just other things that are easier to spend it on. So not only do we have that challenge, but then we also have the challenge that even in countries where there is a renovation program and it might be offering generous subsidies, unless there is an element of that which is ring-fenced for eligible low-income households. In general, we always see the higher income households, having access, getting the benefits. Also, if we see very simple things like access to the fund being only online, access to the funds being more complex, we do see, the lower income households, the households we need to be starting with, tend to be last in the list in terms of who's benefiting. And if we carry on with that model, we will continue to see this kind of widening divide between rich and poor. So I think, not only do we need more money, but we really need dedicated programs that are designed specifically for low income households. And we need to see them in every community, actually, where low-income households don't have to compete with, higher income households for funds. Just if I may, one word on the Social Climate Fund. I think it's, it is one of those dedicated funds, which is really, really important. However, obviously, this has been said a lot of times, it is not enough. The 72 billion over 7 years. I mean, when you just compare that to the need for investment in the social housing sector alone, that's estimated at 13 billion a year to 2050. So you can kind of just see with those two comparisons, the Social Climate Fund is a really important element. But I think we need to see sort of many more funds all being kind of structured to focus on the low income households first, and to focus on renovation and energy efficiency first.
Thank you very much, Louise. I would like to give the floor to Veronica also now to complete this round of answers, actually. And please, Veronica.
Thank you, Carl. I wanted to reflect on this what came up in the discussion: the local authorities being close to the communities and knowing how to work with them, and these intermediaries that are actually needed to engage those most deprived households. So basically, just to raise awareness about this, that there is an intermediary needed to engage those households, that was not only at the energy poverty, but also in the engagement in the education and the reaping of the labor force, or the labor market related opportunities as well. So I just wanted to highlight that, because I think it's so important for both aspects. Also, I remember a discussion about energy communities. I think, Louise, you were in last year, about an energy community-related discussion. And we were talking about how energy communities can engage energy poor households and include them. And basically, these intermediaries are the people who can, or the organizations that can facilitate the participation of the most deprived, are also, I think, actors that need to be supported, and I think that should be more highlighted or realized.
Thank you, Veronica. Yes, Louise, if you want to complement, yes.
I was just going to say I really agree with that, and I think that goes to the first part of the comment or the question that we were given, which was, is it an information question? And I think resources, I really agree, they're super important, but I agree with Gaspard, and I think what Veronica is also highlighting is this need for information, but not just information, but for the hand-holding. Really interesting example from Scotland, where actually there is a really good programme of energy poverty support for energy efficiency and renewable heat. But I think we're hearing that people just don't know enough about it, and what a shame when that support is available. And so, exactly as Veronica says, I think it is about reaching out to people where they are and informing them and helping them through the process.
I think the element of not one size fits all is a bit another one of the keywords that we hear when it comes to regions in transition, because of course the local dimension is absolutely different from one place to another. We can of course learn from each other, but as also Jeppe said, there's no best practices that can fit all regions. Gaspar, maybe you also want to comment on the on Louis' intervention.
No, I mean, I fully agree with what was said before. I mean, the need to go, quicker, but also with more funds and ring-fenced elements for low-income households. I just want to say that we are in a political context where energy efficiency is maybe high on the agenda as it has never been before. So we always need to do more, but it's true that with the renovation wave and the recovery plans, we see unprecedented funds that are going to energy efficiency. Just to give you an example, for the 22 recovery plans that were adopted before the end of the of last year, we had more or less 50 billion euros dedicated only to energy efficiency. So this is really a lot of money. This is not enough, and I was saying that we need to work with the private sector to add up to these funds. What I would like to say also is that we really need to work on the long-term perspective for the help to low-income households and energy poverty, and that's what we have tried to do in the long-term renovation strategies of the member states. It's not easy to have all member states coming up with the same definition because it's very much linked to social policy. But what we have done is to make sure that member states do have a chapter on energy poverty and low-income households in each of the long-term renovation strategies. We have developed a report on that, which is online, and it's very important to see that member states can compare the policies that they have in the field of energy poverty, that they can learn from each other. And we see very good programs for social housing, for instance, or for reaching out to low-income households in specific communities. I think this is a key point that we need to continue working on to make sure that member states arrive to a common understanding also on energy poverty definition and policies. And that's the reason why the work of Jeppe and colleagues is so important, which is really to bring together these good practices at local level and to make that member states are learning from each other in that field. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Gaspar. REPowerEU in a way has been is part of this acceleration process that we discussed about and that we mentioned also before. But as Jeppe said at the beginning, acceleration means that we need to be careful to not leave anyone behind in the transition process, of course. I think Jeppe would like to provide further comments, right?
Yes, it's only to complement Gaspar and say that if you click on the link that I shared, that's been shared with you, you may go to the EPA online atlas, and you'll find a bit more than 200 examples of how things are actually carried out at local level across the union. So you will also see that that there might not be so far away from the nearest activities in tackling energy poverty. So there's a lot to learn from our neighbors, and there's more dots coming onto this map along the way. And then just one last thing, I think it's also important to say that it makes also a lot of sense to focus on the energy poor when it comes to the general sort of energy efficiency and renovations, because often it is the lowest the sort of low income households that are having let's say the currently the worst performing households. The building stock is basically, if we target here, we will have the maximum impact. So from let's say if we are to put our money somewhere, well, the biggest impact is clearly if we also hold our hands under the most vulnerable in society. And it's a strange race because, I mean, we don't, it's not sort of, we haven't won when the first one is crossing the finishing line. It's when the last one is crossing the finishing line that we have won.
Thank you very much, Jeppe. And I mean, thank you very much also for the last sentence. I think it's a very nice one that I have the feeling will be used also in other opportunities. So thanks for giving the inspiration for that. Time is ticking, but I would like to try to find a moment for a short answer for you on another element. Again, talking about not leaving anyone behind. We discussed during this hour about the opportunities that REPowerEU is opening for communities and regions in transition, and how outlined the possibility to foster a transition, an energy transition. One of the we are seeing throughout this event a strong presence of young people across the different sessions, and I would like to conclude also our session in this regard with a short comment from you on more about the young people's perspective. Is what are the opportunities emerging for young people from the REPower plan and more generally related measures? And how do you see it? Are they part of the picture? Will they play a big role in this? Maybe we can start with Louise.
It's such a different question, and I think, as Veronica said earlier, every community is different, so it's really difficult to make generalizations. But I think I will say that people coming out of education, young people, are entering a job market at the moment, which is very, very difficult. They are entering the world at the moment, which is very, very difficult. And so I think an opportunity to find is this need for new jobs. I mean, Veronica really well described actually that the breadth of jobs that we need to fill, and in lots of areas we have massive labour supply chain constraints. So I think there is an opportunity there to motivate young people who we know, many of them are very motivated by the climate crisis, to motivate them into jobs, whether they be very sort of academic jobs or actually whether they be trades. There's a huge spectrum of opportunity there, I think.
Thank you, Louise. Can I ask the same question to Veronica, and with a short comment?
This question is very interesting because I think, just following up from what Louise said at the end, that I think young people are not always aware how to get into a climate job. So you have to identify what it is. And I think it can start from very early on in basic education, even to what is to make electricians, like make that an interesting job, to create a role model. And because young people really need to identify with the kind of like a fireman is easier to identify than an electrician, or to engage with. Like, it has to be made cool already at the basic education level. And I think it also needs advocacy to make these jobs that are needed realize, to raise awareness about them at schools in a very organized way, and in a big effort everywhere. So again, these intermediaries and even educational social work is needed to effort to identify the jobs that are actually needed there, and education.
Thank you, Veronica. Can I ask Gaspar also to comment for 30 seconds on this?
Well, thank you, Lotta, as has been said, but I think that the current crisis in Ukraine and climate change are really putting energy at the forefront of the political and geopolitical context. And I really see more and more students, more and more young people, looking into this question as an opportunity for them to act directly. So it's not something which is far away from them, and this is something which is related to building renovation, to consumption patterns. I think young people already can act on that field, and they see that this has a big impact at international level. So it's a good way to bridge, your own behavior and politics.
Thank you, Gaspar. Jeppe, would you like to also to provide your last short remarks?
I mean, they will be very short. I mean, a lot of things have been said here, but I think just a remark on saying, like, if you look at sort of the youth opinions about about climate change and acting on climate change, if you see that broadly across the union, you would see that we are facing a new generation that is taking this the climate crisis in a much more let's say heavier way than older generations, because these generations have basically lived while this has been apparent to everyone that we had to act. So I mean, it's a big load to put on the next generation's shoulders, but I believe that the increase of awareness and also the interest in, for instance, jobs that Veronica was talking about will increase. But obviously, those in power now need to ensure that they are pushed even further, that we are increasing our ambitions even further for the youth and enable them to do so.
Thank you very much, Jeppe. As one of my dear friends at the Secretariat for Co-Regions in Transition would say, time has beaten us, and we need to conclude our panel discussion. I would like to thank you all, the panelists, so much for your contribution. I'd like to thank most of all people that have been following the streaming of this session. And let me also personally thank also the people behind the scene that allowed the organization of this event, and that I know that have been working very hard to make this event happening. So thank you very much to the event team that has organized this. You should be able to see a short link to a survey that will be very quick. So please do fill it in so we can continue to improve the organization of these events. Our session is over, but not the JTP event. We still have one more session, the closing session of the meeting at 4, focusing on people-centered transition, and I cordially invite you to attend it. It's going to be a very interesting one. Thank you very much to everyone, and I really hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.